Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
One of the very important contributors to our society are those nonprofit organizations across America. Many of them have a 501c3 in which they're labeled as nonprofit, and they do many, many things for people that if they did not exist, other government entities would have to do it rather than those private organizations, or it would be gone. We would go without it at all. And I'm very pleased to welcome to the program today a person who is going to talk about those organizations in general and about the one at our college, the North Idaho College Foundation. Welcome to the program, Raelle Anderson, a colleague and a great friend, and she is the executive director of the North Idaho College Foundation and also the director of development. Raelle is a graduate of our institution years ago, and then she holds a baccalaureate degree from Montana State University, and she also has a certification in fundraising. Raelle, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Tony.
I believe it's your first time on our program in our 32 years as a television program. Welcome.
It is. Thank you.
And I'm so pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Erna Reinhardt, who is Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and Janelle will commence today's questioning.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Raelle. We're going to talk about a very important subject. I know a lot of our viewers may be familiar with foundations of one nature or another, and many of them are attached to institutions of higher learning. Mm-hmm. But can you tell us a little bit about the North Idaho College Foundation, please, so that we can sort of acquaint our viewers with what we're going to be talking about in the next half hour?
You bet. Thank you, Janelle. The North Idaho College Foundation is a private 501c3 corporation within the state of Idaho, and this is our 26th year as a private foundation, a supporting foundation of the mission of North Idaho College. Basically, North Idaho College Foundation is comprised of and led by a board of directors made up of volunteer community leaders that care very much about education and this community and this region. So our mission is to actively solicit gifts to support the mission of the college, in addition to build a tradition for future generations and make educational opportunities available. So we're very proud of that stewardship and actively try to communicate the needs of the college in ways in which people can give to the college on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Raelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
There are a ton of ways, there are a lot of different ways that people can donate to the North Idaho College Foundation or to nonprofits in general. Using the NIC Foundation as an example, what are some different ways that people can make a donation?
I think the most common way that we might relate to that is donating through cash. We donate to different charities, whether it's education or our church or service organizations in general. They're all abroad, the Red Cross, for example. So there are so many different ways to donate. Many times cash is the most likely way you would donate, cash or check. But you also can donate gifts of stock, appreciated assets, or real estate. And many people make lifetime gifts through their wills and estate planning. A simple thing as naming your favorite charity in your estate, or several of those, is a way in which you can leave a lifetime gift that can perpetuate giving for generations to come and help that mission of whatever charity it might be.
Great.
Raelle, you have gone to a number of conferences and symposiums and workshops around the country in your capacity as the administrator of this particular foundation. Let's talk a little bit about foundations in general.
Okay.
And I know we have viewers in Canada and other states that are interested. They appreciate the fact we have one, but they have their own foundations, or they're trying to create one.
Right.
So let's start with that premise that they're interested in having one. What are the rules or the guidelines to be a 501c3 in this country?
Right.
Our Canadian friends, it would be different. But I'm coming to you and I want to start a foundation. What are some of the things that I must do?
Well, the first thing, if you're within the United States, each state has different regulations for becoming a 501c3, and you would want to communicate with your Secretary of State for the application procedures to initiate that process. As a nonprofit, as a 501c3, you're recognized by the IRS in addition to your state, so you're responsible for filing tax forms. Although you're a nonprofit and tax-exempt organization, you're still very accountable for the dollars that you raise and steward, and then you have to do an annual report to the federal government and also to the state. So basically start with your Secretary of State's office.
You cannot apply for a 501c3 with the U.S. government or the IRS until you first go through the state. You're recognized by the state as a corporation.
Correct.
And then the second stage is to get the 501c3. If you don't get the 501c3 and just are recognized in the state's corporation, then you don't have that federal tax exemption, right?
Actually, I think it can all be handled through the Secretary of State level. I think they help with that process. Same as you and I have to file state and federal income taxes. I think if you're registered within the state, it connects with the federal government already. But there are standards that you have to abide by, and that's, as nonprofits, to be accountable is very important. I've
been involved with some 501c3s, and there are also federal documents that you have to fill out, and they're very detailed.
Yes.
Then my second question is that in that corporation charter with the state and the national government having records, is you're limited in what you can do.
Yes.
You have a charge. You can't go outside that charge. Would you explain that to us, please?
Very true, Tony. When you fundraise, you are supporting the mission of your nonprofit, and the dollars that you raise, the gifts that you receive, and the donors' wishes that you steward must go for the charitable purpose for which you exist. You can be creative in ways in which you raise the dollars, and sometimes that there are so many different ways, but you need to apply it towards the charitable mission of your organization.
So if you're in education, which you are,
yes,
then you could not operate outside of education.
Absolutely.
Even though they're wonderful organizations, you could not be the funding entity for the Red Cross, for
Absolutely. Example. Very true. We do collaborate. I mean, nonprofit people and community people in general like to see good things happen in their communities, and that's why people choose to give, so that the government and so that businesses don't have to shoulder that burden, but so we can control, as a community, areas in which we can support, ways in which we can support those important projects and needs right here in our own region, our own state or country. So it's a nice opportunity nonprofits provide for people to control their wishes, really.
And one final question before I go back. Okay. When you're a nonprofit, and as you've already said, you focus on your mission, in your case education, then you have restrictions on, I understand you have restrictions on how much you can lobby with legislative bodies, or you certainly cannot get involved in partisan politics.
Absolutely true, Tony. You can communicate as a nonprofit. Your board of directors have a responsibility to create awareness about what your needs are as a nonprofit. And our board members very proudly tell the story of North Idaho College, for example. But we are limited in what we can do on a legislative level for obvious reasons. We are here to support the mission of the institution. If the institution chooses to lobby, which it does, that's its role. But our role as a supporting nonprofit to provide the dollars for the creative and extra margin of excellence that North Idaho College is known for.
Thank you.
I have two questions in this round. The first question has to do with the distinction between the institution or the organization and its foundation. I'm not sure people always understand that. Let's say that I say, I would like to give some money to North Idaho College. Do I give money to the college, or do I give money to the organization or to the foundation? Can you distinguish between the two?
Sure. In 1977, when North Idaho College was established, we were established with the blessing of North Idaho College. And basically, we are the gift-accepting agent on behalf of North Idaho College. So technically, all gifts should come through the North Idaho College Foundation to be managed on behalf of North Idaho College. We work very closely with the college president and also have a college trustee member on our board as one of our board members through our bylaws to help that communication stay flowing back and forth. So we are always working towards the mission of North Idaho College and for the greatest needs. So there's a definite distinction, but the foundation exists to support the needs of North Idaho College.
And that would be true with other organizations as well. University of Idaho, their
Absolutely.
University of Idaho Foundation,
You bet.
Washington State University, Gonzaga University, each one would have a foundation
Absolutely.
that would accept their gifts.
Absolutely.
As people are making them.
You bet.
I'm glad that you clarified that. Now the second part of my question has to do, suppose that I want to make a gift to a specific part, I'm really fond of forestry, or I'm really fond of the nursing program, or one of those. How does that work within the foundation? Can I make that gift?
Absolutely. We, through the foundation, are able to basically do fund accounting and track whether a gift, many people give to the library, and we have a special fund that's set up just for library gifts, or just scholarship gifts, or just nursing program support, or just capital improvement, whether we need a new facility or we need to support employee training or whatnot. So various different areas, and as long as it's within the guidelines of what we're able to do, we're open to accepting gifts and channeling those areas of support from our donors to those areas that they're specifically interested in.
But you can't make gifts to an individual, is that correct, who's a student?
That's true. I mean, a family member or you or I could choose to help student X or Y, but the reality is for a tax deduction, if you will, you have to remove the control of that gift. When you give to a charity, you're giving up control of that. The charity will then distribute those dollars, probably according to your wishes if it's within your area of request. But if it's outside of that area of request, they'll do what's best. But in most cases, you know, if, for example, if a gift was given and we weren't able, if we didn't have a student that met that criteria, or if we didn't have a need, we'd have to say to the donor, this might not be possible, but what about these areas? Do these areas interest you? So we try to just keep that menu of opportunity open for all donors. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does, and I would encourage people to go talk to the foundation personnel, and in that way they can get the gift made in the way they want to have it made.
Absolutely.
Certainly people will work with them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Janelle.
I have two questions also.
Okay.
My first one is one of the words that you hear a lot in your line of work is endowment. And could you explain that, how that works and what that is?
You bet. The philosophy of an endowment is basically like a savings account. You put your savings account balance in the savings account, and the interest earnings and market gain that is generated as a result of that is basically what's available to fund the purpose for which you're giving the dollar. So if you're setting up a scholarship, for example, and you want that to be endowed, it lives on in perpetuity year after year after year, and hopefully, if managed correctly, earning interest and generating revenue to support that scholarship each year over time. And what's here today, many of our endowments have grown over the years, especially in the 90s, grew quite significantly and generated scholarship over time. And our endowments are growing each and every day thanks to people's investment in the future, basically. So that, in a nutshell, is an endowment where the principal balance stays for the life of the gift forever, and then the interest earnings go to support whatever area of interest the donor would like.
Now, some of our viewers may think that they need to make a huge contribution or that there's a minimum amount. So talk a little bit about some of the size of your gifts. You probably get some very large gifts, but you probably also get some smaller gifts.
Gifts in general?
Yeah.
Okay. We get gifts ranging from $1 to one of our largest gifts was a gift of real estate that now has grown to a cash value of over $1.5 million. And so people of all different abilities, financial abilities, donate to help others. You know, the whole spirit of philanthropy is helping humankind. And it doesn't matter the size of the gift. It's collaboratively what all those gifts can achieve, and providing students with opportunities here at North Idaho College. We see gifts of all different sizes.
Great.
I want to kind of piggyback on that particular question, and that is, it's back east, and it'll all remain anonymous.
Okay.
But there's a college back east where a friend of mine whose spouse died, and they had no children, and she's a wonderful person, and she owns an oil ranch. She owns a residential home, and she owns apartments. And she went to her college where her mother had gone, and she decided to give all of her property to that that foundation, that college. So they've taken immediate control of the oil ranch, which produces oil, and all the other buildings. But the home that she has, which they will also get, under that agreement, she lives in that home the rest of her life.
Yes.
And even though she's now given up ownership, and if anything happens to that home, they repair it. And so do you have something you can comment about how there's things like that you can do, but you can also protect yourself for the rest of your life.
You bet. Estate planning is kind of the term, or
Yes.
planned giving is the term that you're kind of referring to, where an individual or a family can choose to make basically pretty substantial life choices. It may not be a substantial amount of money for some people, but some people accumulate assets over their lifetime.
Right.
And then if they were to sell those assets and pay capital gains on those assets, it might not be what their interest is, or they might want it to go to the charity for the purpose in which they desire to be supported. So in this case, Tony, it sounds as if this woman feels fondly about the institution, the family feels fondly about the charitable mission, and they basically can give up control of assets or sell those at a bargain or just turn them right over as a gift. They'd get nice tax advantages, but also living in your home is very important, especially for an older person, to not worry about that. And those options exist with our nonprofit. We basically sit down and work with the donor or the family. We like very much for the family to be involved as the donor wishes, so that we make sure that we are adhering to whatever it is that that donor wishes to do. And those types of opportunities exist in all levels. Some nonprofits are larger than other nonprofits and are able to manage those different opportunities in a different capacity, but no, those opportunities do exist.
In this wonderful person's case, she just walks into the president's office one day and tells him this is what's going to happen, and he knew it was going to be a good day.
Oh, wonderful.
When that happened, because it was such a large gift. But in one of the questions along that line, just to help our viewers and we're not here today just to talk about education foundations.
Sure.
As you've already indicated, there are other foundations in other fields that are very important. But in her case, what she decided to do was to have the attorney for the foundation and her private attorney work together. Is that also a wise idea?
Always a wise idea. When a donor decides they want to do something special, my first comment to them is, have you talked with your tax advisor and your attorney? And many times they say no, and you always want the donor to have representation.
Sure.
Because it's always in their best interest. Once that takes place, then you can have the two professionals make sure that the donor's best interests are always first and foremost. And that's always the best advice. But yes, we do have several attorneys that exist on our board, and then we do have counsel that we hire to help in special areas, but we always ask that the donor, or recommend that the donor has advisors as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Janelle Berg.
Some people out there may be saying, I would like to give some money, but I want to make sure it's safe.
You bet.
I want to make sure that it's taken care of carefully. And so what kinds of safeguards are in place with regard to nonprofits to make certain that it's not just, all the money isn't just skimmed off the top and it doesn't really get where we want it to go?
Very good point. Janelle, stewardship is probably the most important part of what we do as nonprofits. That's the credibility of our profession. And managing those dollars to the donor's wishes is of utmost importance. But what we do, just from an accounting standpoint and a basic business management model, is the dollars that we manage, we also manage them along policies and procedures that we feel protect the donor's assets. We have an investment committee that manages that structure. We have an investment council that also manages that. So, and we also have an audit that we basically independently hire an outside accounting firm to come in and audit our books annually, so that we feel, comfortable that what we're doing is the right thing and that we don't inadvertently make a mistake along the way. But we have wonderful audits each year that our auditor comes to present to the board, and strangely enough, it's always a pleasant experience. So I think most nonprofits, that are large enough and are able to do that, hire counsel to come in and basically look at their books and make sure that they're doing the right thing and get advice and fine-tune any accounting structure. But it's a business, and you want to make sure your credibility is the most important of any of the components that you have as a nonprofit. So,
and you have some very strict federal rules that you have to follow as well.
Yes.
I think that will tell you sort of guidelines that you have to follow for them in order to maintain your tax exempt status.
Very true. And one of the questions Erna asked earlier about endowments. I mean, there are federal regulations that govern that the endowment principle, for example, you can never dip into that. You only spend interest earnings from that. And I know with the 1990s there was incredible growth with the stock market and investments. In the last couple of years, when we didn't have the great earnings, a lot of nonprofits have had to stop and say, how are our endowments doing? Many times they can't spend from those for a year or two, just to, allow that principal to gain the momentum back to spin off interest and earnings. But yeah, there are definite guidelines that we follow and adhere to. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to go kind of in a new area.
Okay.
Many nonprofits are involved in fundraising and hosting or putting on different kinds of fundraising activities. And in a broad sense, have you got some tips on what makes a good fundraiser, or how to make a fundraising event successful? Because I know our foundation, your foundation, has some great events, but maybe in the broad term, what makes for a good fundraiser?
I think whenever you're doing fundraising, you have to say, what are we doing this for? What's the goal of this event or the message that we want to convey? And most of the time you're trying to support the mission. For example, and I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to share what we do as a really big raffle. We have a really big raffle at North Idaho College Foundation. But basically that event has three components. A, we are trying to promote the college. B, we are trying to support the carpentry program in which builds that home and kind of showcase that program. And third, it's a wonderful way in which to get the community involved in purchasing tickets for these wonderful prizes that are given away. The elements for a successful fundraiser are A, making sure that you track the dollars and the donors and all the details of that very clearly and specifically, so that every T is crossed and every I is dotted, and then to communicate back to your donors where those dollars go, and make sure that the dollars that you raise go towards that charitable mission. And it does cost a little bit of money to raise money, and I think people understand that. If you're going to hold an event, it's going to cost a little bit of money to hold that event, but the majority of the dollars will go for whatever that critical need is that you're trying to focus on.
Great.
So organization is critical.
You bet. Thanks.
The stock market is like a roller coaster, I was told by one advisor, be sure you don't buy high and sell low, because that's called deficit. And people have a tendency when the market's going up to buy, and it starts going down, they quit buying. You want to buy when it's low. But anyway, to get to my point, in your foundation, other foundations around the country, to be solvent and to be effective every year, to be able to give money to whatever your organization is charged to do, I assume you don't put all your dollars in one thing.
No.
Would you talk about how you should diversify your funds so that if things are going bad in one area, you're making up in another area?
Tony, that's a good point. I think it's good for charities and also all of us to kind of follow the same line. North Idaho College Foundation has a finance committee that oversees the investment management. We have an investment strategy. We have an asset allocation model that governs how much we can invest in stocks and how much in bond instruments or cash instruments. But most importantly, never put all your eggs in one basket. Right. And if you diversify that and you don't go for the amazing gain or the amazing if you just have a stay the course, steady investment strategy with good advice and good counsel, that you can get many times in your community, depending on how many dollars you're going to invest. We have been blessed with the contributions we've received over the past 26 years, where we have an endowment that we invest with outside organization that's a nonprofit that helps us with our investment strategy, and we don't go for the crazy tech stocks all in one basket, but we blend that within our whole portfolio. So it's very important to diversify that portfolio of investments so that they generate income each and every year.
You certainly didn't put all your investments in .coms.
No, not at all. And
just to make the point that's having different baskets.
You bet, very important.
Janelle Berg.
Well, today I'm stuck on two questions each round. The first question is going to be an easy one. I would assume that you would advise people to go to fundraising events. If they're interested in a particular organization, go talk to those folks. Go see if you're comfortable with them.
You bet.
Go see if you're comfortable with their programs. Is that something you would advise them to do?
Yes, absolutely. I think most fundraisers or most nonprofits would be excited to have someone call and say, I want to learn a little bit more about what you're doing. And if that were the case at North Idaho College Foundation, one of the wonderful things we try to do is get people on this lovely campus to see what's going on. Because when you see students or you see staff and faculty and community need right here, because the college provides so many solutions, you get them here and try to show them what's going on. If people aren't able to get down here, they can go visit the website, for example, or we can mail them some literature. But absolutely, find out what the dollars of the nonprofit you're interested in go to, and see if that meshes with your own personal interest in philanthropy, in giving and helping.
And that sort of brings me to my second question. Is there a general rule of thumb for what the administrative costs should be?
You know,
for
that
a nonprofit?
Absolutely. I think many nonprofits, 10% or less for nonprofit administration. There are costs associated with making sure the dollars are managed and stewarded, and there are costs associated with raising money. But below 10% would be rule of thumb, I think, in a prudent manner. And if there might be exceptions out there, but we try to operate well under that radar screen if we possibly can. And the college is very supportive in allowing us to have a home on this campus because we support what they do. But on a business management sense, we have a separate board of directors and policies and procedures for our fiscal management to keep the two entities at an arm's length distance, which is the role of a nonprofit supporting a different organization.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the great things about living in communities of all different sizes are the opportunities to get involved. So tell our viewers if they want to volunteer, what kind of things should they do or could they do to get involved in a nonprofit that they wanted to get involved with?
There are nonprofits that focus more on social needs, or educational nonprofits like ours here at North Idaho College Foundation, or the hospital. So there are different ways in which to volunteer. Some mean coming in and answering a phone or doing a bulk mailing. Sometimes it's come on in and help us with some advising on how we're investing or how we're managing or how we're distributing our funds. We try to provide a menu of those options, but every person is different. So call your nonprofit that you're interested in and say, how can I get involved? How can I help you? And many times it's just spreading the word about the good mission of the nonprofit in the community and understanding clearly what it is and what it does. And because we all know that it's difficult to get the message out to everyone, the good message, not the negative message, but the positive message of all the things that go on. And each one of us is ambassadors for the different nonprofits or different organizations in our community is really the best place to start. Spread the word about the good news of the nonprofit's mission. So.
Great.
On that note, we have to bring the program to conclusion. On behalf of our staff, Rael, we thank you so much for being here. It was most informative.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest has been Rael Anderson, who's the Executive Director of the North Idaho College Foundation. And not only have we talked about the foundation that she heads, but foundations in general, and we hope that there's some foundation out there on some subject that you're interested in, and we hope this is a help to you to be in touch with them and to assist in some way. That is the purpose of this program, to inform you on all these subjects. We hope you'll be with us again next week, and we will shift to yet another subject. From week to week, our subjects do vary. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.